Today's guest is Neelam Patel of Tailored Poetry. She would love to share what it's like to leave a full-time career to pursue a passion, the poetry writing process, following her dreams in the context of immigrant culture, and how imposter syndrome has so many nuances to it, one of which is having brown skin. Please give a warm welcome to ever-blessed Neelam Patel.
Hi
How
there.
are you today?
I'm good.
You were, and it's kind of interesting how I just said that, because you were talking about that in your book, how you wanted to pour your makeup down the drain, which was your skin color, because you thought it was tainted, but it was really tinted. And I love that. I love that how you, the little analogy that you had there, because I want to dig a little bit deeper as to your reason why you believed that about your complexion. Where were you brought up and where are you from? To get more deeper into the reason why. Where did you grow up?
Sure. I grew up in South Jersey, and I was actually born in India, but I was 6 months old when my parents brought me over.
Your parents came over for a job or for a better life for you, or what was the reason for that?
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was for opportunities, for better working jobs, because things were better here than what they anticipated their conditions would be in India. And my dad is an engineer. And so there were visas at that time for engineers. And a really interesting story is that when I was born, my dad had already immigrated to America. So my mom had given birth to me over in India and named me Vibha. And Vibha is a name that means night. And my dad was here filling out immigration paperwork. And they didn't have phones where they were. And so my dad wrote down Neelam, which is my name. And so I had two names.
So Vibha would be, because sometimes I guess people would use it as their middle name, but I'm not sure if it's just, do you just go by either name?
It was just Neelam. I didn't know this. I didn't know this until I grew up. I remember I was just sitting at the kitchen table. My mom told me a random story and I was like, stop everything. I need to know more about this. And for my parents, it was just this side story, like no big deal. And I'm like, that's my origin. That's my name. And so it was just that. My middle name is my father's first name, which is traditional in the Indian community.
Okay. Because I know that with Mexican, being Mexican, we always carry both last names.
Oh,
we carry the father and the mother's last name.
Gotcha.
Traditionally, me, I didn't have it like that traditionally. My middle name was supposed to be my first name. And my mother was like, oh, no. He was going to name me Star in English as my first name. I was like, yeah, no. But they decided to make it a Spanish. And it's interesting how you say that, because my youngest son, we wanted to name him Orion, which was beautiful, because I love it. I love the constellations and all that. And it's so funny that you just said that it was like, that was your, Vibha was your actual, I should have named him Orion, because ironically, he is so in depth with planets, constellations. He knows all the names, even to like those ones that are called planet AZ24, whatever. He knows where they're at, where they're located in the galaxies. And I'm like, that is where his name should have been that. But it makes sense that I guess it's just so ironic how, even though we try to change our names or try to be something different, we always find our reason, our center. We want to be something else, but that's not who we are. Or we were taught to be something that we don't feel comfortable. And like, what? That's not the path and it just keeps redirecting you. No matter how you try, it keeps putting you back on the same path. It's so interesting, isn't it? How your name means so much.
And I love so much. And I love that you mentioned that because of the stars, because in a way, what you're saying is, it depends on where you lie in your belief in destiny versus, your own agency and things. But there is something about the source of who you are and how maybe it was written in the stars. And so, and my name Vibha was named after the astrological kind of alignment. And then when my dad named me and Neelam, I had to do some work and I actually wrote a poem about the emotional work I had to do to be like, okay, no, Neelam is my name. And there's something about being able to write your destiny, even within the context of what you're given. So I thought that was a lovely balance. And Neelam means blue. And so, and specifically the blue of sapphire. And so I found that to be lovely too, to find my own intrinsic, gemstone version of myself too, that is regardless of my name.
Wow, that is actually very interesting, especially knowing that you are a poet, and it's like, it means so much more to you because now that you probably appreciated life and how you've gotten to your path, and everything just seems like it's just right on track with your name and your identification of your self-awareness. And I love watching, like I said, I like watching different types of TV cultural. I think I even watched one. It was like they did matchmaking in India.
Yeah.
They would actually have someone who they would go to and they would take their name, their birth date, and try to, like a matchmaker.
Yep.
So you're born there, but you were raised like hardcore American. Did you ever carry on any of the culture?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I grew up because I was in South Jersey, there are a lot of South Asians, Indians, in fact, specifically people from the state that I'm from, which is Gujarat. So there were a lot of people in the community there. And so when you have people from the community, they're able to create cool cultural events. So we kind of grew up, me and my two sisters, in that kind of circle. And so we knew that the Indian holidays, the Hindu holidays is what we practice at home. And, and we went to the temple as kids. There was, Sunday school and all the rest. So I would say a ton, and I love to dance. Dance is my first love and probably my, the thing that brings me the most joy. And that I learned through the Indian community.
I have danced ballet. I've done Latin American dances. I've did Afro-Caribbean dancing. I love going to the different culture dances. I've done to powwows. I've actually done India Fest. Well, in Wisconsin, they had multiple cultural fests. They had, Asian Fest, African World Fest. I would go to all of them and I would like jump in with the rest of them. I used to go to Greek Fest and I actually learned how to do that. Oh, it's so cool. I just love, this is the culture. We wear like paint on our bodies and it's like, you know what I mean? Do you kind of understand what I'm saying? I think I'm getting all poetic here. I'm sorry. That's your job.
Oh, you're talking to a poet. I love it. Yeah. No, there is a vibrancy. And when I was traveling in India, I think when I looked at it, like when people were washing their clothes out by the river, for example, and I'm passing by on a train, it is so beautiful to see those colors and see that sense of life through those colors, seeing the saris all laid out on the rocks. There was a gorgeousness to it. Of course, that juxtaposed with the reality of their life, that they're doing all of this labor to get to the clean clothes. And I was enjoying the beauty. So I was well aware of that juxtaposition, but still it spoke to the vibrancy of that culture and, on all levels. So there is a beauty in that. So thank you for saying that.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for letting me share it openly, because sometimes I feel like I don't want to throw out something that's completely just preposterous or bigot or whichever you want to call it, because I try to learn. That's why I want to embrace and appreciate and not come towards someone with these misconceptions of someone's culture, just like I wouldn't want them to do that with me. They're like, oh, you're mixed, so whatever, or because I'm the only child, oh, you must have been spoiled beyond recognition. No, I was like the different misconceptions that people perceive based on your status, your gender, your culture. It's just your complexion, you know, it's just like, it's, and like in India is like the caste, they have the caste system. No, a caste system comes in different shapes and forms. Here in America, it's unfortunately the same type of rules. The darker you are, the more it seems like you are ignorant or uneducated or illiterate. You don't want to get a job, or you want to live off the government. You want to have multiple children, thinking that they can, you know, whatever. Just the whole concept is just construed. And it frustrates me because I think I'm just rambling on, but it just, there's so much comparison into the struggles that each culture goes through. And it's very sad that we have to go through that. So, but anyways, I want to, on a lighter note, because we were talking about such beautiful places, what is the most beautiful place you've ever been?
Yes. Oh my gosh, so many places. I was lucky enough to have been given the chance to travel a lot for my previous job. And so there were tons of places. I think the thing that comes to mind right now, maybe because I just spoke with my mother, I don't know, but my mom, dad, and I went to Alaska together. And I had a wonderful time there because of the natural beauty. There was a certain vibrancy in everything and every site that I saw, and the majestic mountains. And it was just, everything was breathtaking. And I didn't think glaciers could be so stunning, but I couldn't get enough of them. I just didn't even want to blink my eyes. It was so gorgeous.
The closest I can ever get to Alaska, because I can't stand cold weather. I think the closest I've ever been was I went to, just recently, last weekend, I went to the Dallas Art Museum. Been here in Texas for 6.5 years, and I've never gone to any of the places in Texas because I'm working so much. But I was actually down there with a friend of mine, and she was in town, and we decided to go there. And I was like, you know what? I've never gone here. And it was interesting because they were talking about the glaciers and the icebergs. They had I think 140-minute film during nighttime filming glaciers. They used some type of video drone, and it was just so beautiful just watching the glistening of the moon, like the cracks of the glacier. When the drone was hovering over it, you can see like the moon reflecting in between the glacier cracks, and it looked like the veins of the earth, which is kind of like pulsating with the glimmer of the moonlight within the cracks of the glacier. It was just so beautiful. And I was like, that's as close as I want to get to cold, but it's beautiful just to see.
So beautiful. Yes. Yes. And I love that someone made an installation out of that, because just to think of how much creativity just looking at the glaciers was inspired for me. I'd love to hear that other artists were inspired similarly. I love hearing stories like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems obvious, but also it is just very exciting for me to hear.
Yeah. Sometimes you just got to stop and smell the glacier.
Yes. Yes.
Some people forget to do that. Yeah. Like we've referenced many times in our conversation, you are a poet, and don't you know it? So I just like to do the haha. I know you probably get that all the time, like someone doesn't write.
Yeah. And then I make a joke back like, no, everyone needs a poet. They just don't know it.
I love it. Wait, hold on. Let me do the, back in the day when they used to have it in the 70s, where they used to clap with their step, the fingers during open mic.
That's right. The beat poetry. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of poems, what poem that you've written are you most proud of?
Well, I'm proud of a lot of poems, actually. And it's because during this time that I've been writing, I've been really going into my feelings in a way that I have never before dealt with my uncomfortable feelings. So recently, I'm proud of a lot of poems. But to give a quick answer, it's like the very first poem I wrote was way back in 2003. I did an open mic and scribbled something down. And I was proud of that because it was about, identity, about being of Indian culture and of American culture. And what I liked about that poem was that I was, it was probably the first, it wasn't super uncomfortable, like it didn't expose too much of the uncomfortable feelings, but I mentioned them. And so I'm proud of it because it doesn't just look at the sunny side, it looks at the frustrating side too. And I think you have to go there in order to get to the other side. And the other side is, of course, where you can feel like a badass to say, hey, I can go in and out of different matrices of culture. I can fit in the American, I can fit in the Indian, and there's a magic to that. But to really love that and appreciate that, you have to sit and settle in with any of the discomfort and shame that comes from feeling othered. And so that poem I'm proud of because I start naming, that was the beginning, I think, of my naming the things that were uncomfortable.
It was a place called the Mecca, and it was located in Milwaukee. And I was invited by a very intriguing poet himself, very wide known in the Milwaukee area. And I just got there and I was like, me being an introvert, I was like, yeah, I'll just watch everybody else do it. But I was like, he just kept encouraging me to go up there. And I just like you said, I just scribbled something on there. And I think it was called Butterscotch. And I was going based on my skin complexion. And I was identifying what a woman who was in between two worlds of a race, her skin is beautiful, but, this is what she has to do. Her life is rough, something. And I was just kind of like going and doing some crazy stuff. And people were like, wow, how long were you doing? I was like, it took me 3 minutes to do it. And I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was like, wow, it was like really, really good. And I was like, I was waiting for them to do this, but this was in the 90s. So they weren't doing but it was like really interesting.
Oh, what a cool story. Yeah. Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. So it's interesting that both of our first steps into poetry were related to that, that inner conflict / fusion of two different worlds.
Yeah. Just trying to identify myself. I think that was at the point I was just trying to figure out where I fit, because I'm too light to be in the in crowd with the Black community, but I'm too dark to be in the Mexican community. I didn't like to be called those particular derogatory names that they used to call us, mulatto or mixed breed or other crap that they would use. And so, and being an introvert and the only child, I wasn't very sociable. It was just really, really hard for me to kind of be accepted in any place. And then not being American, born on American soil, I was born overseas. So I didn't know, I could have been a Japanese dual citizen, but, that's not in my cards for now. But I mean, it's just like, the only reason why I'm considered American is because my mother was born here. But it's like, again, I just couldn't, I didn't have an identity. I didn't know who I was.
Yeah.
And I'm still kind of struggling with it off and on when someone says, oh, where are you from? That question always gets me. Where are you from?
I hate that question. Yes, I hate it.
I'm like, this is a 2-part. I'm just letting you know. You want to know where I was born or where I was raised? They're like, okay, is it different? Of course it is. That's the reason why I'm saying it's 2 different things. And they're like, well, okay, where were you born? And I tell them, like, really? One time I came, I'm sorry, I don't want to get off the rail, but I have to share this with you. So I just came from England to America, going to the public school system. I was taking the bus out to the school. And one night someone asked me, because I had a very British accent when I came over, and they were like, where were you born? And so I said I was born in Okinawa. And they said, well, where is that? And I'm like, that's Japan. I mean, that just tells me right off the bat, the school system is not working in the American school system. But he said, oh, so you must be Chinese. I just looked at it, I was like, oh my God, this is a failed school system, and I'm going to go and attend this school system. People think I was born in Japan. I'm automatically makes me Chinese. And I'm thinking that's they're completely different.
I mean, I feel like it's on track. We're talking about identity. I think it's on track.
No, it's just that comment was just like, oh my God, what did my mother put me in? This school system.
Yeah.
Lord help us all. I gotta.
Yeah, you're like,
these are my classmates.
Yeah, it's like before you even get started, you're like, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. Yeah, because people are trying to make sense of the world around them. They're trying to make sense of you, and they're calling out the fact that you look different from them. So they're trying to. And so that's like, I think that's the underlying tension is, where are you from is asking, why do you look different from me, as opposed to a curiosity and so I find it to be a microaggression when someone says that, and then you're faced with it and you can't even get to conclusion. I mean, you were young, you're not going to be able to recognize what might be going on in this kid's head, and they're just trying to make sense of the world, and so I think it must have been jarring for you.
What is your favorite poem from an author or poet?
Yeah, so I have so many favorite poems, especially Maya Angelou. I'll read her poems out loud, but if I had to pick one, I know. But if I've choreographed dances to her poems, I just love her work. But my favorite poem, I have to go back to 19th century British literature. I love Yeats' poem, Second Coming. And the reason is because to me, that poem is about how, I think the words, things fall apart and the center cannot hold are in there. And so I think of life as this constant movement and, things are breaking. Like if we look back to our glaciers, the glaciers might melt and might create something new. And I feel like that change is always happening. And that's the pulse of my poetry, that where is that tension? Where is it breaking? Where is it moving? Where is it going to? And the fact is that the second that you're like in a new place and you're like, okay, I'm healed of this particular monster I was dealing with, or I'm in this new place, then even that new place, if we go back to your son's love of astronomy and all things sky related, it's like if you're in a new place out in space, right? You found a new home, like, oh, I'm over here now. And even that will start rupturing and start feeling uncomfortable because of the nature of our humanity and maybe the nature of the universe. And then we need to shake things up, change, look at things differently at least, and find a new stasis. And so that Second Coming poem really, really kind of hits that nail on the head. Yeah. And I'm making an effort now as a poetry reader to look at poems from people who are people of color and women. And here I am quoting a 19th century British white male poet. And yet there is a beauty to his work. And so it would be a mistake just to deny the fact that I go back to that poem quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now. Because ironically, that was one of the classes I took in high school, British authors.
Oh,
and I want to read a little bit of it. Unless you want to read it, we can like switch off, because I think that would be pretty cool to have as part of it, because I know I really want you to say a poem about that you've created, but it would be so cool to have one on here. Yeah, let me read it. Here, you start off and then I'll do the crescendo.
The Second Coming by William Butler Yeats. Turning and turning in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart. The center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed and everywhere. The ceremony of innocence is drowned. The best lack all conviction, while the worst are full of passionate intensity.
Surely some revelation is at hand. Surely the second coming is at hand. The second coming, hardly are those words out, when a vast image out of Spiritus Mundi troubles my sight, somewhere in sands of the desert, a shape with lion body and the head of a man, a gaze blank and pitiless as the sun, is moving his slow thighs while all about it, real shadows of the indignant desert's birds. The darkness drops again, but now I know that 20 centuries of stony sleep were vexed to nightmare by a rocking cradle. In what rough beast, its hour come round at last, slouches towards Bethlehem to be born. Woo, give me chills. Did I
Beautiful reading, Jazz.
Oh,
that was
thanks.
beautiful. I can see you want to be a voiceover actor.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Thank you. This was awesome. If I could do like a virtual high five.
Fun. I know. That was so fun. That was so fun. Thank you. Poetry on a Friday.
Okay. I know, right?
It was beautiful. Thank you.
That's awesome. Awesome. What I was reading on your website, you had like, you do a variety of things in your poems. I was specifically looking at your eulogy. I know, dark comedy. For me, because I have a music eulogy. I've compiled songs for my funeral. I know.
What? Oh my goodness.
Because I
was not expecting that.
Yeah. I was a singer. I was a DJ. I loved playing musical instruments when I was younger. So music has always been my life. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to go out with a bang with some of the best known songs of history for my funeral. I mean, you know, I don't know. But that was the thing.
I like the vibrancy of it. Yeah. To say, hey, I'm gonna make a playlist that's full of life.
It's like my 1980s mixtape. For my eulogy.
Oh, wow. Yes.
That is so funny. So to the question that I wanted to ask you is, what is the best piece of advice you've received during your career or outside of your career, personal, professionally, either one or both?
The one that is the most essential for me sounds a little kindergarten-y. It sounds a little Mr. Rogers, but it pierces me every time. Mm-hmm. And it's not going to make a lot of sense unless you're actually creating art and putting it out there. But it's this very simple sense of care and share. Mm-hmm. That's it. And the reason I love it is because I know I care a lot about the work I'm putting in to writing a poem, to listening for the essence of what I'm trying to say, to getting a piece together. And then the second part is, okay, then you share it. What I love about it is it takes all that drama angst out of the whole thing. And it's like, oh, I'm just caring about my poetry and then I'm sharing it. Mm-hmm. And that simplicity makes me realize what it is I'm doing and really focuses me and really does take all of that frenetic energy of, performance anxiety and like, what will the people think, out of it, because I have agency over caring and I have agency over sharing. Mm-hmm. And so I just loved that advice. And I go back to it even now as my book is in process.
That's awesome. Plain and simple identifications of respect each other. That's all you have to do is love each other, respect each other, be a friend, be a neighbor. It's like the simple things in life. And someone finds a way to construe it by throwing something in there like, well, you can be a friend to that particular person or a neighbor to that particular person, but not that person over there. That's not how it works. That's not how it works.
Yeah. And I guess the way that I see that in relation to the work I'm doing is, in order to really be a neighbor, be a friend, you have to love yourself first. Mm-hmm. Because the reasons we might be pushing away certain people or certain things that make us uncomfortable is because that part of ourselves is uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. And so how do we make more space for the things that are uncomfortable? And I think that's also where, care and share for me is also like an act of self-love, that I'm just thinking about my act of caring and then sharing my work with others. And the more I put that love and care into myself, the more I'm available to be your neighborhood poet,
Right. Exactly. But the last question that I had was, what inspired you to venture into this career path? And I think you've even hit on the topic in the YouTube that you did. That I think it was Master 2. You had identified the reason why you had gone on this path. But could you tell the listeners exactly what inspired you to venture?
Sure. So I had a very successful career in high tech for a very long time. And we're talking over 22 years.
Mm-hmm.
And all the time, there felt like something was missing. And I addressed that in the past by taking acting classes, writing poetry, showing up to open mics. I even produced one-woman shows. I auditioned for theater shows. I was on TV. I did a bunch of things. But I still had this very demanding day job I was carrying around. And at one point, I took this meditation workshop and I was really going inside myself. And something just blew up for me in my mind where it was like, they say life is short, but in some ways, life is long in that we have time to do things. And I thought, well, what the heck do I want to do before I die? And I'm not sick, I'm not dying, but we all are dying in some ways. We're all going to meet that moment and it's gonna happen. Where do I want to spend my energy? And it hit me like lightning. I was like, I know this is gonna happen. It's just a matter of how. And then because I was tired of overthinking it, my friends were tired of me saying every year, like for the last 10, 15 years, this December, I'm going to quit. This December. And I don't know where I got December from, probably at the end of the year, but like it's super arbitrary. And then December would come and go with some formation of excuse or not. And then I was like, I'm just tired of negotiating. And so I just quit, and meaning quit that career and, didn't start looking for new jobs, didn't start that networking thing that I'm so good at. Like, oh, let me just email everybody, get my resume together, do my thing, talk to people. And instead I went into my feelings. And then I was like, oh, I know what I want to do. I want to express myself before I die. I want to express myself fully in like full 360 degrees before I die. And then I was like, awesome. Great. Now, how the heck are we going to do that? And what do you want to say? And I had no idea what I wanted to say. And so I had already, worked on poetry. Like I said, I've been doing one-woman shows for a long time in poetry. So I had a bunch of work. So I put those together in a manuscript. And then I was like, okay, well, what else do I want to say? And then I got really specific and realized that now without a job, I was faced with myself. My identity as an executive in the tech industry, my identity as someone who earns money in the science and engineering field, even though I was doing customer success, it still felt legitimate. So, now the question was, am I a legitimate human? Because you're faced with all your labels right in front of you because you don't have a day job to escape to. You don't have an inbox to look at to go ahead and escape all of those things. No, those things are like, here I am, let's talk. And so the way I talked to them was writing poetry. So I have poetry about lots of subjects that were coming up for me, including, things that I thought I had covered. I'm like, I already covered that in that poem. But the difference between covering it and feeling it and sitting with the shame, that is a brand new thing. So then my message became clear. Then the car started driving me. At first I'm like, okay, I've got kind of a semblance of a car. I know I want to say something. I know I want to say something that's important to me. And then all of a sudden it started talking. It started having a life. This book was trying to say something. It was trying to do something, which was to let other people also sit with the very, very uncomfortable feelings of saying, well, what does it feel like to not feel worthy? And just sit with it. Because when you do and you allow yourself to do that, and others are not equipped to help you do that, right? And including myself, like if a friend comes to you and says, I feel ugly, right? Everything you say to negate that is also could, by accident, negate the experience that they're having. Oh, you look beautiful. You look like this. You look like that. Remember this happened and that was beautiful. And look at this. It's like, okay, those are facts and figures. And then what that ends up doing is making you, well, for me, I should speak for myself, made me feel stupid. Like, don't you even get it? Like, why do you not get it? And so now it was a shame that I was feeling ashamed. Yeah. And that's like, whoa, that's so deep, it hurts. And you can't get out of it. So then that's what my poetry became about. Like, okay, I actually do feel ugly. What does that look like? And it's uncomfortable, and it's not sexy. And it's, I do have inspirational poems in there, but honestly, what happened was I was watching other poets and other Instagram artists that I admire and still want to consume their work and be inspired by them and interact with their work. But there was a sense of like before and after, and even in healing. And that to me, and I made up a word, like healing strife. It was causing me healing strife. Like, but I'm not healed yet. What is that? I'm not there yet. I feel ashamed of myself that I'm not that badass yet. And I know I can follow her work and like get there and all of those things, but there's a tinge and it's very subtle and slight. And, the luxury of not having a job and I'm a super sensitive soul. It's like, I can feel every flicker. And so I was like, wait, what was that thing? And so I was like, I want to write about that. And it became the messy middle. And it's like, well, that's where it is. We're all here in the middle. There's nowhere else. We're all already here. You guys are fine. Everyone's fine. Like we're all a hot mess in certain ways, in certain parts of our lives, there's going to be messy things. And just to hide those is what causes the pain. It's not the mess that causes the pain. It's the shame of the mess that causes the pain. It's like, okay, this part over here, I don't know what I'm doing there. I'm a mess. Yeah. Like that kind of like, oh my God. But also, okay, that's a mess. Got it. And the mess is allowed in the room, but you're not now damaging yourself about it. Like, hiding it, pretending that it's not there. And that's where the pain is.
Yeah, that is very good. I love that. You are just so, I guess I should say you're a very talented poet. Just the concept of your explanations and just so in depth. I love it. Just listening to the types of things that you have in this book. It's amazing. So is this the only book that you currently are in the process of completing, or has it been completed? Is there any other ones in the near future?
Yeah, such a great question, because it's funny what happens when you start writing a book. You have new ideas for new books, but I'm not done this book yet. So I'm of the philosophy one baby at a time. And so the manuscript is done. It's been greenlit by my editor, which I'm really super proud of. And I've gotten a lot of good feedback and constructive feedback. There's, let's talk about the messy middle. Let's be honest. There's about 120 poems in there. And some of them, like, I see the comments and I'm like, really proud. Like, I think I'm done with this poem. Like, it's fine, and I see other poems that are like close to done, like, oh, just make sure the spelling's right. And I'm like, wow, like I'm already there. And then there's other poems that are total dumpster fires. Like there's something in here that looks like it could be a poem, and so I have that. And so if you think about it, I'm practicing in this particular area, I'm practicing what I just said, which is, hey, there's a dumpster fire in my manuscript of in the section of these particular poems. But also I'm going to do this podcast and talk about my book. And so, that's something that's true.
I love it. Maybe one of these days I'll have my own dumpster fire of my life in a book, because I think mine is nothing but there is some little sprinkle of sugar and other spices and stuff like that when my children are getting involved in my life. If someone wants to reach out to you, the listeners that are either listening to us or watching us on YouTube, what would be the best place that they can reach out or contact you if they wanted to know more about you and your services, if you do provide?
Sure. Yeah, I do custom poetry for special occasions where I'll sit and listen to your story and swim inside of your relationship or your person who you're celebrating, and offer a custom poem. And also I have this book coming out. And if you have any ideas or questions or collaboration ideas, I'm totally open for it. You can find me on Instagram at Dance with Neelam, and that's Dance with Neelam, and Neelam is spelled N like Nancy, EELAM like Mary, Neelam.
Also, in closing, please share us your poem. I cannot wait.
Yes. Thank you for asking, and thank you for this platform. This was such a fun opportunity that I will not forget.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. Thank you. This poem is called Nationhood. I'm too Indian to be American. I'm too American to be Indian. In India, where I was born, I was moved to the foreigners area in a temple that smelled and looked and felt just like the one in New Jersey when I was young. I was marked as an American by my walk. This body designates me Indian in color, American in movement. I was not at peace in the temple bosom of my motherland. And back home in America, I didn't coordinate well with blonde, allowed to date, shoe-wearing inside of the house Americans. It was so painful to have one ear that hears only Indian sounds and another that picks up just American vibrations. I tried being both in different company, but it got confusing. I never knew which flag to pick. Neither one fit my mixed up true self. That's why I hold citizenship in a land the shape of my 2 feet. And where I step forms the boundaries of a nation I call myself. And with each move I make, the bells on my dancing feet ring to the beat of my humanity, my hope, my nationhood.
Thank you so much. That was very beautiful. I really enjoyed spending time listening to a wonderful poet. And you're my first poet on my podcast too. Like a 2-in-1 here. This is awesome.
Yeah, the circle of firsts. Yes,
exactly. I am so honored to have you in here, and I appreciate everything that you provided to on this podcast as well as to our listeners. Well, you have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.
You too. Yes. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Noise Paloo Zion podcast. I'm Jasmine Castillo, also known as DJ Jim Jam. If you are wanting to be promoted on my podcast, please reach out to me if you are a small business, entrepreneur, musician, or artist. www.jasminecastillovoice.com. Stay tuned for the next upcoming episode.